Hi folks, this is Karim Raouf from IT Visualizer channel. We will continue our lab, the Matrix Labs, the video number 51. We have been discussing in the previous video the following. We have still working with the Purple Knight Active Directory security assessment tool. We have seen the different tests run by this tool. We are currently working on the group of tests called Active Directory Delegation. We have stopped the last time at the test which is called non-privileged users with access to GMSA passwords. We have seen before that GMSA or group management service accounts are special kinds or special kind of account that is used to run services. Its password is generated automatically by the domain controller through a root key, which is very critical, and it is replicated to all the domain controllers. Anyway, the next test is checking if there is any non-default users that have access to this GMSA passwords, or they can see the password. Okay, so here is saying that the indicator looks for principals. Here principals is referring to users or groups that can see, he say, listed within MD group GMSA membership that are not in the built-in admins group. So here is saying that he is referring to, I think, a group in the Active Directory. If anyone is the member of it, he can see the GMSA password. He's trying to see. He's saying that looks for principals. Here I think he is referring to users listed within a group, or the group called MSA membership, okay, that are not in the built-in admin groups. So I think here the one that can see the password or reveal it are, I think, the domain admins, enterprise admins, and schema admins. Here he's trying to see if there is any uh, uh, users that are not in these groups that can see the GMSA password. He's saying that an attacker that controls access GMSA account can retrieve passwords for resources managed with GMSA. Okay, so he's saying that he can take control of a service account that will run a program or a software. By controlling the GMSA account running this software or program, he can retrieve passwords concerning the application or concerning the service run by the GMSA account. I think he's talking about this one. Anyway, so here, what are we focusing on? We are focusing upon who has the right to see the GMSA password. Okay, this is only for a few users or a few groups. Here he's trying to see non-privileged users that can access to GMSA password. Okay, very simple and very straightforward. Okay, the next test is built-in guest account is enabled. We all know that there is in every Windows an account called guest. This is a very limited account. It doesn't have any password, so you can just press enter and go, or you just type the username guest and then login. So it doesn't contain any password. It doesn't contain any password, and it is very limited, or have very limited rights. Anyway, a best practice is to disable this account, and in some recommendations to rename the guest account. So here is trying to see if the here is saying the indicator check if built-in Active Directory guest account is enabled. If it is enabled, then this is a point. You need to disable the guest account and rename it. Okay, the guest account allows for account with no password access to the domain and is disabled in most AD environments. So this is very straightforward test as well. Attackers can take advantage of guest account to enumerate open shares that are accessible to everyone's settings. So here he can take advantage of the guest account to list the shares that are open for everyone. This is a group, or this is a default group, or this is a group that you will find in every Windows operating system. Okay, you will find a group called everyone. Okay, so what here he's saying, the attacker can use the guest account to see the shares that are accessible for everyone, okay, or for the group called everyone. As in often the case, additionally, attackers may utilize the limited access these accounts provide to conduct additional scanning for vulnerable users, shares, and other network resources. So he's saying that the guest account may be not used to gain access or to control, or it's not used to control, for example, or take advantage of a privileged user or group, but it is used for scanning for shares and vulnerable users in the network. Okay, so this is not a good thing. So he can use using this account to scan for vulnerabilities in your network and scan for shares and scan for users. Okay, so anyway, it is a best practice to disable the guest account, okay, not to leave it enabled. This is on all servers and all workstations. This can be applied using a group policy to disable all of the guest accounts on all of your workstations and servers and rename them as well. So this is the next test, and this is very simple, and you have passed the two, which means that we have our guest account disabled and we have our uh, users, or we have the access. Just a moment. So let's continue, guys. Here we see the two tests. We have successfully passed these, and then go to the next test, which is users with permissions to set server trust account. Okay, so this is a feature, or this is, I think, an attribute. Here, let's see what the description is. Checks for permissions on the domain NC. I think this referred to I have already asked the AI tools to translate it, or just to make it more clear. Okay, I will show you all what this means, but actually this is a feature that if it is enabled on a computer object in the Active Directory, this give it permissions as, or it will give it the permissions of the domain controller. So if we see the server trust account attribute enabled on a computer, this means two things: that this computer is a domain controller, or this computer is acting or have the permissions, or uh, have the facility, have the all of the rights of the domain controller. It can authenticate users and do a lot of things. So this is very critical. If the computer having this object is not a domain controller, then we are in a big trouble, because that means that another computer is acting as a domain controller. So let's see what is the answer, or what is a server trust account, and then ask ChatGPT for auto explain it. Here it is. You see Perplexity uh, ask, or giving us the answer. Let's see or read it loudly. So before doing that, let me show you all what the test is looking for. It's looking for users that can add this feature to a computer object. So for example, Karim can add the server trust account feature to a computer object in the Active Directory, which means that I can promote any computer to be a domain controller, not promote it. I can give any computer the rights or the permissions of a domain controller. So this is very critical. This should not be available for anyone. Let's see what the AI tool will say about this feature in specific.
The server underscore trust underscore account is a specific type of computer account in Active Directory, AD, that is designated for domain controllers that are members of a domain. It is identified by a user account control, UAC, flag with a decimal value of 8192 or hexadecimal value 0x2000. Key characteristics of server underscore trust underscore account. Purpose. The server underscore trust underscore account flag indicates that the computer account is associated with a domain controller, allowing it to participate in domain operations and trust relationships. User account control attribute. This flag is part of the user account control attribute, which contains various flags that define the properties and behavior of user and computer accounts in Active Directory. The server underscore trust underscore account flag specifically allows a machine to act as a domain controller. Security implications. By setting the server underscore trust underscore account flag, a computer account gains certain privileges, such as the ability to replicate data within the domain. This is crucial for maintaining synchronization of directory data across domain controllers. Distinction from other accounts. Other types of accounts include workstation underscore trust underscore account, 4096 for regular workstations. Interdomain underscore trust underscore account, 2048 for trust relationships between domains. Usage and management. Setting the flag. The server underscore trust underscore account flag should only be set on accounts that are intended to function as domain controllers. Improperly setting this flag on non-domain controller accounts can lead to security vulnerabilities and operational issues. Permissions. Only users with specific permissions, such as domain admins or those granted the appropriate rights, can modify the user account control attribute to set this flag. In summary, the server underscore trust underscore account is an essential component of Active Directory that allows designated computer accounts to function as domain controllers, facilitating trust relationships and replication within the domain environment. Proper management of this flag is crucial for maintaining the security and integrity of the Active Directory infrastructure.
Very, very important flag, as we have seen here, that is related to the user account control setting. So this flag will tag the computer as a domain controller, or give it the rights of the domain controller. Let's go and see ChatGPT and ask it the same question, but wait for a moment, guys. I need to do something. So let's continue, guys. Let's see the answer of ChatGPT for all concerning the explanation. What is a server trust account? Let's see how it will answer this one. So let's go like this and read it loudly.
The server underscore trust underscore account is an account type in Active Directory that is used to designate machine accounts, typically for domain controllers. It is a specific value that identifies a trust relationship between a domain controller and the domain it belongs to. Key points about server underscore trust underscore account. Account type. Server underscore trust underscore account is an account type attribute, user account control, associated with domain controllers within an Active Directory environment. It helps in identifying accounts that are specifically for servers acting as domain controllers. Purpose. This account type ensures that the machine, server, can establish a secure communication channel with the domain. It signifies that the account is trusted to handle sensitive domain operations, such as authentication and replication. User account control flag. In Active Directory, the user account control attribute is a bit mask that defines various properties for a user or computer account. Server underscore trust underscore account corresponds to a specific flag within the user account control attribute. The value for this flag is 0x2000, 8192 in decimal. When this flag is set, it indicates that the account is a domain controller's account, used for server trust operations. Related attributes. Alongside server underscore trust underscore account, there are other flags within the user account control attribute that define different types of accounts, such as workstation underscore trust underscore account for regular computer accounts and interdomain underscore trust underscore account for interdomain trust accounts. Role in domain controllers. When a server is promoted to a domain controller, its machine account in Active Directory is marked with the server underscore trust underscore account flag. This ensures that the domain controller can participate in the domain's authentication and replication processes. Example scenario. When you promote a server to a domain controller using tools like Promo, in older versions of Windows Server, or the ADDS Deployment Wizard, in more recent versions, the server's computer account in Active Directory is modified. The user account control attribute for this account is updated to include the server underscore.
So let's continue, guys. This is still the explanation of ChatGPT for what is a trust or what is server trust account flag. Let's continue the explanation.
Server underscore trust underscore account flag, thereby designating it as a trusted server account within the domain. Importance. Security. This designation is crucial for maintaining the security and integrity of the Active Directory domain. Only servers that have been properly promoted and trusted by the domain should have this flag set. Domain functionality. Without the proper setting of the server_trust_account flag, a domain controller might not function correctly, leading to issues with domain authentication, replication, and other critical operations. How to view or modify. Administrators can view or modify the user account control attribute using tools like Active Directory users and computers. ADUC under the account properties, you can view the user account control attribute. PowerShell. Using the getAdComputer or getAdUser commandlets to query the user account control attribute. etcedit.msc, a more advanced tool that allows direct editing of Active Directory objects and their attributes. Example PowerShell command. To check if a specific domain controller's account has the server_trust_account flag set, you can run PowerShell copy code getAdComputer identity DC1 properties user account control select object name user account control. Here, DC1 is the name of your domain controller. The user account control value will include the server_trust_account flag if it is set correctly. Would you like more details on how to manage these accounts or any specific scenarios where server_trust_account is relevant?
So this is a very, very important flag. If it is on any computer, then that means that this computer is a domain controller or he's given the rights of a domain controller. So let's see also what Claude has to say about the same issue. What is a server trust account?
Our Active Directory security? Copy. Retry. KR. I have the user account control. The server_trust_account is a specific attribute or flag associated with computer accounts in Windows domains. Here's a concise explanation. Definition. Server_trust_account is a user account control, UAC, flag that designates a computer account as a domain controller in Active Directory. Purpose. Identifies domain controllers within the Active Directory domain. Distinguishes domain controllers from regular member servers or workstations. Technical details. It's a bit flag in the user account control attribute of computer objects in Active Directory, represented by the value 0x2000 8192 in decimal. Characteristics. Automatically set when a server is promoted to a domain controller. Removed when a domain controller is demoted to a member server. Significance. Crucial for domain controller replication and authentication processes. Helps in identifying and managing domain controllers within the forest. Related concepts. Workstation_trust_account. Used for regular member computers, servers, and workstations. Interdomain_trust_account. Used for trust relationships between domains. Management. Typically managed automatically by the domain controller promotion/demotion process. Should not be manually modified under normal circumstances. Querying. Can be queried using Active Directory tools or PowerShell. Example PowerShell query. PowerShell. Copy. getAdComputer filter. User account control. Band 8192. Properties user account control. Security implications. Accounts with this flag have significant privileges in the domain. Protecting domain controller accounts is critical for domain security. Understanding server_trust_account is important for Active Directory administrators, especially when managing domain controllers or troubleshooting replication issues. Would you like more information on how this relates to domain controller management or Active Directory security?
So this is a very, very important flag that when it is attached to a computer, then it means it is a domain controller or a computer acting or having the rights of a domain controller. So we see that the purple nice is checking if there is any user that can play with this flag or can change this flag or can edit this flag. So this is very, very important. Checking for permissions on the domain and C head that enables a user to set a UAC flag server trust account on computer objects. So this is very, very critical. This flag gives the computer object special permissions similar to a domain controller. So we can see, for example, further explanation like code of compromise, a persistent technique originally reported by Stealth Bits researchers, an attacker that is able to seed authenticated users with these permissions can then utilize their access to these users to promote any computer they control to domain controller status. So it's saying that they can give the authenticated users these permissions, and then he can use them to flag any computer uh, to act as a domain controller, or maybe to promote any computer they control to domain controller status, enabling privilege escalation to AD services and carrying out credential access attacks such as DC sync. And there is the link itself, so you can read more concerning this topic. Okay, I think this is a more detailed explanation. Okay, you can read more concerning this bug or this technique. Okay, you can ask tools like, for example, Copilot to generate a summarize for this page, for example, just to get a brief about what it is talking about. So, for example, we can see here that give us a little bit of a summary, saying that the key points of this page: privilege escalation technique, changing the user account control attribute of a computer to include server trust account. It can grant it a domain control privilege. We have seen this, or we have discussed this. Permission required to set the server trust account bit. The DS install replica permission is needed, typically granted to domain admins and enterprise admins. So it's saying further details. To make this, you need to have some permissions or a special permission called DS install replica that is granted typically to domain admins and enterprise admins. Persistent method. Adversaries can use this technique for domain persistence by creating a computer account with a known password and modifying its user account control attribute. Detection and meditation or meditation, monitoring sensitive Active Directory permissions and auditing changes to user account control attribute can help detect and prevent this technique. So very, very simple. You can read in details what this page has to say. Okay, so we can go further and continue working with the other tests. If you can go further, the next test is non-default value on MSMCSADMPW search flag. So this is basically related to something called local administrator password solution. So what is the local administrator password solution? This is a solution implemented by Microsoft to change the local administrator's password or the local administrator account's password on all of the machines in the domain, including the servers. So we all know that every Windows operating system has a user called administrator, which is the local administrator of the machine. Typically, the password of this user is not changed frequently. You need to change it frequently. If it is done automatically, then this will be more easy, because if you done it manually, it will be a headache. You have 100 PC, for example, you need to change all of the local administrator accounts passwords manually every now and then. So the LAPS solution, or the local administrator password solution implemented by Microsoft, there is a mechanism to change all of the local administrators passwords and restore them in the Active Directory. So here is saying that or this test is saying non-default value on MSMCS admin PW search flag. Here he is talking about the users that have the ability to search for the local administrator's passwords inside the Active Directory. Let's read or see the description. Some flags on the MCS admin PW schema may inadvertently cause passwords to be visible to users, allowing an attacker to use it as a stealthy backdoor. The indicator looks for any changes to default search flag, which may create an exposure. Detection of changes to the default will result in a score of 80 of this indicator, signing or signifying that a review would be conducted. Any removal of the default flag will result in a score of 0 due to their importance to security. Likelihood of compromise. Even though schema changes are not common, a targeted schema change like this can leave the administrator password of 100S and 1000S of computers vulnerable to an unprivileged user. Let me see, I think I have seen Perplexity, or I have given him this description and try to explain it. So again here, what is MCS admin password search flag? Here he will try to explain it, or let's see what is this one. I think here is explaining this, and let me see further if there is anything here. Okay, this is for Perplexity. I think we can go for ChatGPT as well. If you go further, I think I have already also given or ChatGPT for auto explain. Just a moment, I think here we are going further. Okay, this is also another question. So okay, let's see what is the MCS admin PWD. Let's read and see what is this attribute in specific.
The MSMC CDM PWD attribute is a part of the Local Administrator Password Solution, LAPS, in Active Directory, which is designed to manage local administrator passwords on domain-joined computers. The search flags associated with this attribute play a crucial role.
So let's continue, guys.
Role in determining its accessibility and security. Search flags for MSMCSADM PWD. The search flag's value for the MSMCSADM PWD attribute typically includes the following flags. F preserve on delete. This flag indicates that the attribute should be preserved even if the object it belongs to is deleted. F confidential. This flag marks the attribute as confidential, meaning that only users with specific permissions can view its value. This is critical for security, as it ensures that the clear text password stored in this attribute is protected from unauthorized access. F never value audit. This flag indicates that the attribute's value should not be audited for changes. FRODC filtered attribute. This flag indicates that the attribute is filtered out from being replicated to read-only domain controllers, ROCs, enhancing security by preventing sensitive information from being available on less secure domain controllers. Importance of search flags. The search flags for MSMCSADM PWD are essential for maintaining the security framework of LAPS. The F confidential flag ensures that only authorized users, such as domain admins or delegated users, can read the password stored in this attribute. This helps mitigate risks associated with credential theft and unauthorized access to local administrator accounts. Configuration and management. To ensure that the MSMCSADM PWD attribute is properly secured, administrators should regularly check the search flag's value and ensure that the F confidential flag is set. This can be done using PowerShell scripts to query the attribute's properties. For example, you can use the following PowerShell command to check the search flags. PowerShell get a d-object search base, schema naming context, filter LDAP display name, EQ MSMCSADM PWD, property search flags. In summary, the MSMCSADM PWD attribute is a vital component of LAPS, and its search flags are crucial for ensuring the secure management of local administrator passwords in Active Directory environments. Proper configuration and ongoing management of these flags are necessary to protect against unauthorized access and potential security breaches.
So this is, in simple terms, this is a way to secure the local administrator passwords of all of your workstations and servers. So the search flag here is making sure that no one can see this attribute because it contains the passwords of the local administrator accounts of your servers or workstations. So let's wait for a moment, guys. So let's continue, guys. Let's see the answer of ChatGPT for all concerning this parameter. So again, the test is saying non-default value on MCS admin PW. So we have seen that Perplexity is saying that there is some default values for this attribute. Okay, and I think this attribute is a computer object attribute. So he's saying that this attribute should be set to F confidential, okay, so that only domain admins or delegated users can see the password of the local administrator account. Okay, by the way, the local administrator account password is saved to the computer object. So for example, if there is a workstation and you need to save the local administrator password of it, it will be saved to the computer object in the Active Directory. So this is one thing. As we can see here, this is a very good detailed explanation. If we go to ChatGPT and see the answer, let's see what is said, or what is the explanation.
The MSMCSADM PWD attribute is part of the Local Administrator Password Solution, LAPS, a Microsoft feature designed to manage the passwords of local administrator accounts on domain-joined computers securely. The MSMCSADM PWD attribute stores the actual local administrator password for the managed computer. Search Flags attribute. The Search Flags property is an attribute setting in Active Directory that controls how certain attributes are handled in searches, replication, and indexing. For the MSMCSADM PWD attribute, the search flag's value is particularly important because it controls whether the attribute is indexed and, most importantly, whether it is included in replicated directory data. Specific use of search flags for MSMCSADM PWD. Confidentiality. The MSMCSADM PWD attribute is marked with a special search flag setting to ensure that it is treated as a confidential attribute. This means that even if a user has read access to the attribute, they cannot view the password unless they have explicit permissions to do so. This setting helps protect the sensitive password data. Search flag's value. For the MSMCSADM PWD attribute, the search flag's value is typically set to 128 hexadecimal 0x80. This value indicates that the attribute is a confidential attribute. 0x80, 128 in decimal. This flag marks the attribute as confidential, ensuring that only authorized users can read it, even if they have general read access to the object. Indexing and replication. The attribute is not indexed, meaning it is not used in search filters to improve search performance. The attribute is included in standard replication, but is protected by the confidentiality setting so that only those with explicit permissions can read its value. Example scenario. If you have deployed LAPS in your environment, the MSMCSADM PWD attribute will contain the password of the local administrator account for each computer managed by LAPS. The search flags property ensures that this password is only accessible to specific users or groups who have been granted permission to read it, typically through the MSMCSADM PWD read permissions group. Importance of search flags. Security. Ensuring that the MSMCSADM PWD attribute is marked as confidential prevents unauthorized users from accessing sensitive password information. Controlled access. Administrators can specify which users or groups are allowed to read the MSMCSADM PWD attribute, enforcing strict access control. Summary. The MSMCSADM PWD attribute is used by LAPS to store local administrator passwords. The search flag's value for this attribute is set to 128.0x80 to mark it as confidential, ensuring that only authorized users can read the password. This setting is crucial for maintaining the security and integrity of the password management process in an Active Directory environment. Would you like more information on how to configure LAPS or manage the MSMCSDMPWD attribute?
So here the test is checking the non-default value. So the default value for the MSMCS admin PW is F confidential. So if there is any other value, then this is a finding. Okay, so this is the test, and we have seen how this, or what is the explanation. Okay, so it's saying if change like this can leave the administrator password of 100S and 1000S of computers available to non-privileged users. I think 100 users he mean, or 1000 computers anyway. So the other one is objects in privileged groups without admin count. Okay, so it's saying this indicator looks for objects in privileged group with admin count not equal to 1. So we all know that if there is any user that is added to a privileged group, the admin count of this user or this object is changes to 1. Okay, just a moment, guys. So he's saying that the indicator looks for object in privileged groups with admin count not equal to 1. Admin count is the object flag that is set by SD prop process. We have discussed this before when we were discussing the admin SD holder, run by default every 60 minutes. If that object DACLs are modified to sync with the admin holder object through inheritance, if an object within these groups has an admin count not equal to 1, then it could significantly that the DSL were manually set, no inheritance, or there is an issue with the SD prop. So here he's making sure that all of the users in privileged groups have admin count 1. So what will be the problem if some users in the privileged groups doesn't have admin count 1? So he's saying, while not immediately indicative of an attack, privileged users that are not clearly marked as such admin count equal 1 represent an exposure in that they may be used nervously without being detected. Additionally, an attacker may add a privileged account and attempt to hide it using this method. So if the admin count of the user is not is the admin count of the user is not 1, even though he's added to a privileged group, then he will be not detected, or I think his activity will not be recorded. We all know that most of the privileged users have their activity recorded by the event viewer. So it's saying here that this can be used by an attacker so he can work with the account without being logged, okay, or without being noticed, okay. So it's saying maybe an issue like that happens because there is a problem in the SD prop process, or there is a problem with the permissions, okay, on the user himself. He is not inheriting, or saying no inheritance, for example. It could significantly say that DCLs were manually set to not inherit. So for example, the user will not inherit the permissions from the group, or I think, or from the OU. Anyway, so he's saying that there is some documents concerning this topic. If you go there, saying the admin is the holder. Anyway, so in very simple terms, he's saying, or he's checking for users that are users or groups, I think, that are members of privileged groups and their admin count is not set to 1. Okay, so this will be a problem because an attacker can use it and it will not be recorded. Okay, let's see here without being detected. Okay, so this is one thing we need to focus on. Okay, and then the next thing is changes to MS Labs read permission. This is also related to the local administrator password solution of Microsoft. This indicator looks for permissions on computer accounts that could allow inadvertent exposure of local administrator accounts in environment that use Microsoft Labs solution. These permissions include read access to SMCS admin PW as well as write DACL and owner, which could allow provisioning the read access. Labs provides a method to rotate local administrator account passwords on servers and workstations. Okay, so it's saying also here, I think this is related to read permissions of, I think, of the local administrator's password. Okay, let's see here. Only authorized administrator users should have access to labs passwords. Okay, so this is related to the passwords. Attacker may use this capability to literally move through a domain using local compromised administrator accounts. So I think this is somehow related to the MC admin PW attribute. Both are talking about who has permissions to read the local administrator passwords. Okay, stored in the Active Directory. The indicator is not applicable because labs was not found in the forest. So I actually am not working with the labs. So this is also one thing to note. Okay, the next thing is non-default principals with DC sync rights on the domain. Okay, let me wait here for a moment or see something here. What is non-default principals? When we are talking about a principal here, we are talking about a user or a group with DC sync rights on the domain. Let's see the description. Any security principal, maybe a user or a group, with replicate changes all and replicate directory changes, permissions on the domain naming contacts. Okay, this is a partition in the Active Directory database, can potentially retrieve password hashes for any or all users in Active Directory domain. Additionally, write DACL owner also allows assignment of these privileges. This can lead to all kinds of credential theft-based attacks, including golden and silver tickets. Okay, so I think here he's talking about who has access, or if there is some users or groups that have these two permissions, replicate changes all and replicate directory changes. Okay, these two permissions are very, very critical. Okay, if any user have these two permissions or group have these two permissions, especially on the domain partition of the Active Directory. So we here are focusing upon what we are talking about. We are talking about the Active Directory database, the domain partition, the permissions on the domain partition. If there is some users or groups that has permissions on the domain partition, the Active Directory, especially the replicate changes all and replicate directory changes, it can retrieve all the passwords of the users in the Active Directory. So we need to make sure that only the authorized groups or groups or users have the permission to replicate changes and replicate directory changes. Okay, I think only one that have the permissions to do that is the domain controllers. They can replicate changes and replicate directory changes. Anyway, so this is two important permissions. We need to make sure non-default principals. Okay, for example, I think the only one responsible for replicating changes and replicate directory changes, these permissions I think are for maybe the domain controllers as a computer object, and I think maybe the domain admins maybe or enterprise admins. Okay, so let's see the description by code of compromise. DC sync is an attack for accessing credentials through this method. If an attacker gets a hold of these privileges, it is straightforward to retrieve credential material using tools like Mimikatz or for a user in the domain. Okay, so let's see here. I think let me see something. If I go for ChatGPT, I think I have finished already this one. Okay, if we go to Perplexity, let me see. I think I have something in the library here. So maybe if we go further, group manage accounts, schema, LAN admin. Okay, anyway, so I think maybe we need to stop at non-default principals with DC sync rights on the domain. I think we can stop at that point and begin in the upcoming video discussing what is the privileged objects with unprivileged owners. So we will stop at these or at this test. Hope this video is informative for you all, and thank you all for viewing. Thank you so much.